What if I told you? The moment you feel completely destroyed is actually the moment your real life begins, not when you're winning, not when you're confident, but when you've lost everything. Publicly, painfully, and there's no one left to blame but yourself, because here's the truth nobody tells you. Anyone can win. Anyone can feel strong, but only a rare few can rise after they've been completely broken. This is the story of one warrior who chose to rise when everything in him said, "End it." And by the end of this video, you're going to understand something powerful. You don't become unbreakable by avoiding failure. You become unbreakable by refusing to stay down. Chapter 1. The Fall, Japan, year 1598. The battlefield was silent, not peaceful, but the kind of silence that comes after destruction. Bodies scattered across the ground, broken weapons, mud mixed with blood. And in the middle of it all, a young samurai named Dai knelt in the dirt, his armor shattered, his katana broken in half, his lord dead beside him. He had failed, not just privately, not quietly, publicly, completely, irreversibly. And in the world of samurai, failure like this had only one answer: death. The code of honor. Every samurai lived by a code, and that code said, if you fail your lord, Dotum, you don't deserve to live. There was only one honorable way out: seppuku, ritual suicide. Clean, expected, respected. Dai knew exactly what he had to do that night. Under the dim light of the moon, he knelt in the garden, dressed in white, his tanto blade pressed against his stomach. One push, and the shame would disappear forever. No more failure, no more guilt, no more pain, just silence. The moment everything changed, but then something unexpected happened. His hand started shaking, not because he was afraid of pain, but because of a voice, a memory. His father, a legendary warrior, known as Dai the Iron, a man who had fought in over 40 battles and never lost. Before he died, his father had told him something Dai never fully understood until this moment. Any fool can die for honor. The true warrior lives for it. That sentence hit harder than any sword, because suddenly, Dai realized something terrifying. Ending his life wasn't courage, it was escape, the decision that defines everything. That night, covered in mud, covered in blood, covered in shame, Dai made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He lowered the blade, slowly, silently, and stood up. He had no honor, no lord, no reputation, no purpose, but he had something else. He was still alive, and if you're alive, you still have one option left. You can rise. Real truth about never giving up. Here's where most people get it wrong. Never give up sounds nice, but it's not about motivation. It's not about feeling strong. It's not about confidence, because the truth is, you won't feel strong when you're broken. You won't feel confident when you've failed. In fact, you'll feel the opposite: destroyed, empty, lost. And that's exactly when the real test begins, the real question. It's not, will you fail? Because you will. Everyone does. The real question is, when life knocks you down, when everything falls apart, will you rise or will you quit? Chapter 2. Before the fall, 3 months before that battlefield, Dai was everything a samurai should be. 24 years old, skilled with the sword, loyal to his lord, confident, maybe a little too confident. The shadow of a legend, Dai wasn't just any warrior. He was the son of a legend, a man feared in battle, respected across provinces. People didn't just expect Dai to succeed. They expected him to be greater than his father. And Dai believed it too. He trained harder than anyone. mastered sword techniques, studied strategy. On paper, he was perfect. But there was one problem: he had never been tested, never faced real death, never felt true chaos, never experienced the moment when everything collapses. Because training is controlled, battle is not. The ambush. It happened on a spring morning. Dai stood beside his lord Bemtuts, leading 300 samurai through a mountain pass. Suddenly, they were surrounded, not by 100, not by 200, but 800 enemy warriors. No escape, no reinforcements. Just one reality: they were going to die. The first clash. The attack was instant. Steel clashed. Men screamed. Blood filled the air. At first, Dai held his ground. His training kicked in. He moved fast, precise, focused. He cut down one enemy, then another, then a third. For a moment, he looked like the warrior everyone believed he was. The turning point. Then everything changed. An arrow struck his lord's horse. The animal collapsed. His lord fell to the ground, and in seconds, enemy samurai swarmed in. This was it. The moment Dai had trained his whole life for, the moment he would prove himself. The failure: 4 enemies attacked at once. Dai fought desperately, blocked one strike, dodged another, but the third cut deep into his shoulder. Pain exploded, his grip slipped, blood covered his hands, and then, the final moment. A massive enemy warrior charged straight toward his lord. Dai stepped in. Blades clashed, once, twice, then crack. His katana shattered, just like that. The moment of truth. The enemy didn't hesitate. His blade moved past Dai and struck the real target. Dai heard it, that final breath, that last sound. His lord, dying behind him. Humiliation. The enemy warrior kicked Dai aside like he was nothing, like trash, and said one word: useless. Why this moment matters: because this right here, this is where most people break. Not when they lose, but when they realize they weren't who they thought they were. They weren't ready. They failed when it mattered most. Ending of Part 1. Cliffhanger. Dai survived that battle, but for him, survival was worse than death, because now he had to live with the shame, the failure, the truth that he wasn't the warrior he believed himself to be. And what came next would either destroy him forever or turn him into something far more dangerous. Chapter 3. The Shame of Surviving. Dai did not die on that battlefield, and to him, that was the cruelest part. His wound was not fatal. His shoulder burned, his body ached. But none of that compared to what crushed him inside. Because he had lived, while his lord had died. He had not fallen in glorious battle. He had not protected the man he swore his life to. He had not become the son everyone expected. He had survived as a witness to his own failure, and sometimes that kind of survival feels heavier than death itself. The surviving samurai were eventually released by the enemy. Not out of mercy, out of insult. The message was clear: go home. Tell everyone how you failed. You are not even worth killing. Those words followed Dai every step of the journey back. For 3 days he walked through mud, rain, and silence. No companion, no comfort, no excuse. Just the sound of his own thoughts. Every mile reminded him of the same truth. His father had died protecting his lord. Dai had failed protecting his. By the time he reached his village, he already felt buried. The conversation that cut deeper than any blade. When his mother saw him, she knew immediately. No victory looks like that. No honorable return wears that face. She looked at him for a long moment and asked quietly, "Lord Takahashi?" Dai lowered his eyes. "Dead. And you?" "I failed him." Silence filled the room. Then she asked the one question he had already answered in his own mind. "What will you do now?" Dai spoke without hesitation. The honorable thing. He meant seppuku. His mother's face hardened. Do you think that is what your father would want? Dai's jaw tightened. Father died with honor. His mother stepped closer. No, your father died fighting. That is not the same as running toward death because you cannot bear shame. Dai looked up, shocked. Running? Wasn't ritual death supposed to be courage? Wasn't that what honor demanded? But his mother saw what he could not. You think death will restore your honor, she said, but death only ends your chance to rebuild it. Dai turned away. He could not hear her. The shame was too loud, the failure too raw, the humiliation too complete. When pain is fresh, wisdom often sounds like cruelty. And so that night, he prepared to die. The night of decision. He washed himself carefully, dressed in white, wrote his death poem, cleaned his blade. Every movement was calm, deliberate, like a man performing a duty. He went into the garden and knelt beneath the cold night sky. The moonlight touched the steel in his hands. He placed the tanto against his stomach. This was supposed to be the moment, the final proof of honor, the final act of a failed warrior. But then, nothing happened. He could not do it. Not because he feared pain, not because he feared death, but because deep inside, beneath the shame, beneath the self-hatred, beneath the collapse, there was still a spark, a whisper, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet truth rising from somewhere he had nearly buried. This is not the end. Dai's breathing changed, his grip weakened, and for the first time since the battle, he questioned the story he had been telling himself. Maybe failure was not final. Maybe shame was not a verdict. Maybe surviving was not punishment. Maybe it was an opportunity. Slowly, he lowered the blade. Then he stood up. That moment did not restore his honor. It did something more important. It gave him a future. Chapter 4. The Man in the Mountains. Dai left the village before dawn. He had no destination, no plan, no title, no purpose. Just legs that kept moving. For 2 weeks he wandered through forests and mountain paths. He avoided villages so no one would recognize him. He slept under trees. He ate what little he could find. He was alive, but he did not yet know what living was for. Then one evening, deep in the mountains, he came upon a small shrine. It was quiet, hidden, ancient, and outside it sat an old man feeding birds, simple robes, weathered face, stillness in his posture, the kind of stillness that makes you feel louder just by standing near it. Dai tried to walk past him, but without turning, the old man said, "You walk like a defeated warrior." Dai stopped. His hand instinctively tightened. "How do you know that?" The old man scattered more seeds and replied, "Because I have seen many defeated warriors. Most choose one of two roads, death or drunkenness. You chose neither. That means you are still searching." Dai stared at him. For the first time in days, someone had looked directly at the truth inside him. The old man gestured beside him. "Sit." And Dai sat. The lesson that changed everything. The old man listened as Dai told the whole story. The battle, the broken sword, the death of his lord, the insult, the shame, the blade in the garden. When Dai finished, he expected judgment. Instead, the old man simply nodded. Then he asked, "Do you know who I am?" Dai shook his head. The old man answered, "My name is Miyamoto." Dai froze. Every warrior in Japan knew that name. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated swordsman, the legend, the master of masters. Dai immediately bowed lower, but Musashi's next words stunned him even more. "That title people give me, undefeated. It is wrong." Dai looked up, confused. Musashi continued calmly, "I was defeated many times, in training, in combat, in failure. The difference is not that I never fell. The difference is that I never stayed fallen. Dai felt those words hit somewhere deep, because until that moment, he thought warriors were divided into two groups, those who win and those who fail. But Musashi was offering a third category, those who fall and rise again. The dojo of a new life. Musashi stood and led Dai behind the shrine to a small dojo. On the wall were written the words, "Fall 7 times, rise 8. Musashi looked at him and said, "This is the only principle that matters. Not talent, not pride, not strength, not reputation. Just this. When you fall, rise. When you fall again, rise again, and keep rising until rising becomes your nature." Dai stared at the words. For the first time since the battle, his failure looked different, not as an ending, as a beginning. "But I failed my lord," Dai said quietly. Musashi nodded. "Yes, and if you die from that failure, then failure becomes your legacy. But if you rise, learn, rebuild, then failure becomes your teacher." That sentence changed everything. A teacher, not a curse, not a life sentence, a teacher. Musashi stepped into the center of the dojo and picked up a wooden sword. "Show me your stance." Dai obeyed. He expected advanced techniques, secret methods, master-level wisdom. Instead, Musashi struck him to the ground in seconds. "Again," the old master said. Dai rose, and just like that, his real training began. Ending of Part 2, Cliffhanger. Dai had lost his lord, lost his honor, lost the man he thought he was. But now, in a quiet mountain dojo, he was about to discover a truth more powerful than victory itself. The strongest warriors are not the ones who never break. They are the ones who rebuild. Chapter 5. Training in Failure. The next morning, Dai stood in the dojo facing the greatest swordsman alive. He tightened his grip on the wooden sword. Musashi looked at him calmly and said, "Today, you will fight me." Dai nodded. "This is it," he thought, "my chance to prove myself." They bowed. Then, it was over in seconds. Dai was on the ground, defeated. Again. "Stand up," Musashi said. They fought again. This time, 12 seconds, then again, 10 seconds, again, and again, and again. The breaking point. After 20 straight defeats, Dai snapped. He threw the sword to the ground. "I can't beat you!" he shouted. Musashi didn't react. "Correct," he said calmly. "Now pick up your sword." Dai stared at him in frustration. "What's the point? I'll just lose again." Musashi stepped closer. "The point is not to win." Silence. Then he said something that would define Dai's entire life. "The point is to rise after defeat." Dai froze. "You have fallen 20 times today," Musashi continued, "and you have risen 20 times. That is the training. The real skill." Dai shook his head. "But I'm not improving." Musashi looked directly into his eyes. "You are improving at the only thing that matters. Continuing when you want to quit. Because here's the truth most people never learn. Skill can be taught, strength can be built, talent can be developed. But the ability to keep going when everything inside you says stop, that is rare. That is what makes someone dangerous." The transformation. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And Dai kept losing. Hundreds of times he lost to Musashi, he lost to other students, he even lost to beginners. Every loss burned, every defeat attacked his pride, but something slowly began to change. After 100 defeats, he stopped getting angry. After 200 defeats, he started noticing his mistakes. After 300 defeats, He began adjusting. After 500 defeats, he won. Not a perfect victory, not a dramatic moment, just a small, quiet win, but it meant everything. The real victory, Dai bowed after the match. Musashi called him over. "Congratulations," he said, "on defeating something far more dangerous than your opponent." Dai looked confused. "What do you mean?" Musashi placed a hand on his shoulder. "You defeated the part of yourself that wanted to quit." Silence filled the dojo. "You fell 500 times," Musashi continued, "and you rose 501. That is true victory. Why most people fail?" Musashi turned to the other students. "Most people quit after 3 failures, maybe 5, maybe 10. They tell themselves they're not talented enough, not built for it, not meant for greatness. But this one," he pointed at Dai, "has proven he can endure 500 defeats. And that makes him dangerous." What makes someone unstoppable? "Do you know why?" Musashi asked, then answered, "Because now, there is no number of failures that can stop him. If you can rise after 500 falls, you can rise after 5,000, after 10,000, after anything, and when failure can no longer stop you, you become unstoppable." Chapter 6. The Psychology of Rising. That night, Musashi gathered his students. "Let me explain why some people quit, and others become unbreakable." He drew a line in the dirt. Every human faces failure, but they respond in one of 2 ways. Path 1. Learned helplessness. When someone fails repeatedly and believes nothing will change, they stop trying. They become passive. They accept defeat as identity. This is where most people live. Path 2. Anti-fragility. But if someone fails and believes each failure makes them stronger, their brain adapts. They become more resilient, more focused, more dangerous. This is the warrior path. Rewiring your mind. Every time you rise after failure, Musashi explained, you rewire your brain. Fear becomes weaker, control becomes stronger, confidence becomes internal. You stop seeing failure as who you are and start seeing it as what you learn from. The Phoenix mindset. In our tradition, Musashi continued, we speak of the phoenix, a creature that burns and rises from its own ashes. That is the warrior spirit, not avoiding destruction, but surviving it and rising stronger. The final truth of fear. When you accept the worst that can happen, Musashi said quietly, you become free. Because once you've faced failure, shame, pain, loss, and you're still standing, nothing can control you anymore. Chapter 7. The Final Test. Months later, Musashi gave Dai his ultimate challenge. You have learned to rise in training, he said. Now you must rise in real life. He gave him one task. Find the warrior who killed your lord. Dai's blood froze. This was the man he hated, the man he blamed, the man he dreamed of killing. But Musashi said something unexpected. Do not kill him. Thank him. The impossible task. Thank him? For destroying his life? For killing his lord? For humiliating him? It felt impossible, but Dai understood. This was the final test, not of strength, not of skill, but of who he had become. The confrontation. After weeks of searching, Dai found him. Not on a battlefield, but on a farm, an old warrior, living quietly. The man looked up, recognized him, reached for his sword. I'm not here to fight, Dai said. Then why are you here? The man asked. Dai bowed deeply. To thank you. The final transformation. The man stared at him, confused. You killed my lord, Dai said. But you also destroyed the weak version of me. You showed me the truth. that I wasn't ready, that I needed to be broken so I could rebuild. Silence. Then the old warrior slowly sat down, and for the first time he smiled. "You've become something rare," he said. "Most men stay broken. You chose to rise." Final message: the warrior way. Dai returned to the dojo, but he was no longer the same man. He was no longer trying to prove himself. He was no longer afraid of failure, because now he understood the ultimate truth. Strength is not never falling. Strength is rising every time you fall. Victory is not perfection. Victory is persistence. Honor is not avoiding failure. Honor is facing failure and rising anyway. The message for you: life will break you. You will fail, you will lose, you will doubt yourself. That is guaranteed. But here's what's not guaranteed: whether you rise, and that is everything. Fall 7 times, rise 8, not because it's easy, but because that's who you are. Choose the rise always.